President Cyril Ramaphosa has appointed the ANC's head of economic transformation, Enoch Godongwana, as the new finance minister in a cabinet reshuffle. Godongwana has replaced Tito Mboweni, who had asked to be excused from his position. This saw several other ministers being moved around, following both the death of former minister in the presidency, Jackson Mthembu, as well as the resignation of Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize. For some reaction on these developments, let's chat to Lumkile Mondi. He's from the School of Economics and Finance at Wits University. Great to have you. So glad we've got you for some analysis this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
So, obviously, I'll get your overall reaction to the cabinet change, but the one specific reaction I'm looking for is to that of the finance minister. I mean, did you see the resignation and the move of the finance position?
I was expecting it because Minister Mboweni has been tweeting about it, and even his management of his team was done remotely. Of course, we know that you are in the pandemic, but it left a lot of questions to many of us that how can he really play a much more critical role when he's running his ministry from Mahuba's Kloof. So it was very clear that he wanted to go. The appointment of Mr. Godongwana is a surprise. It is a surprise because it reinforces the perception or arguably the experience that we have had at least three really good ministers of finance. We had Minister Manuel, who was exceptional. We had Minister Nen, who was brilliant. And then we had Minister Kordan, who in fact has... although he managed resources efficiently, but he allowed himself to be used by the Zuma government in the investment Transnet and Eskom, which became repurposed. So having both Malusi Kikaba, who had a checkered past with the Guptas, and now Minister Godongwana, who's also got a checkered past with the pension fund scandal of workers with Richard Cowie and others, particularly that led in fact to him being appearing before an inquiry and leading to him resigning from the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. So really we're quite surprised that there's a continuity here of checkered past ministers, Godongwana, previously Kikaba. Maybe the letter G, we have to be worried as South Africans that ministers that letter bring a checkered past with it in a position that's critical for economic revival.
Yeah. So, I mean, talking about a checkered past, unfortunately, Enoch Godongwana doesn't come in with a clean bill of health, even though he has got, some wonderful credentials and he holds some very strong and powerful positions at the moment. The reality is that he has a very checkered past. Now, what is that going to do coming into a very powerful position? Talk to us about that.
Well, firstly, we must also remember that on the eve of SAA getting into business rescue, he chaired DBSA that led to about 2.3 billion rand being poured into SAA when many of us wanted the land to be allowed to collapse and allow new competition to come into that space. So really, I'm wondering, in fact, that, given that South Africa is very close to high levels of debt and is going to have to negotiate quite a lot of debt rescheduling going forward, that aren't we going to find ourselves having difficulty that we're not as strong in comparison to countries like India and China, who've got very strong ministers of finance and teams around who can negotiate some debt rescheduling. So that's going to be a question, I think, for South Africa around Minister Godongwana. But more importantly also is the ability to build confidence among paper holders. These are institutional investors in South Africa and internationally who hold South African paper, whether is South Africa really going to stay the course of fiscal discipline, as well as of ensuring that workers don't go and raise their pension, given that there's already a talk about allowing some money being drawn from pension, which is a dangerous move because when these workers retire, they'll have less of their savings. and therefore they'll have a huge burden on the state, when in fact the state is thinking about introducing a basic income guarantee. So you can imagine that we've got people that have never been employed benefiting from a basic income guarantee, and those that didn't save enough because government allowed those workers to cash out before they retire. So we're seeing a concoction really of a state that may fail eventually, given what we saw in Argentina and other countries where, South African economy gets strangled because of poor policy choices, as the one that we're making politically, as well as the policy that's being discussed relating to pension fund withdrawals by the Minister of Finance.
Yeah, it is a worry. I mean, we do know as well that the small business is one of the big aspects in the economy that really have suffered and are still suffering at a dramatic rate right now. Now, we see that a new minister has been put into that portfolio, and the finance minister has also been one that has spoken quite a lot about and been an advocate for small businesses as well. So hopefully we will see some movement finally in that portfolio, because that has been one portfolio that has been one that's been ignored, and ask any small business and they can tell you that that's exactly the case on that one. So can we see a little bit of hope on that? And let me ask you, within small business, I know that was the one question. We've got very little time, but on the same note, the labour unions, because I'm sure that they're going to be pretty happy to see the appointment of the likes of an Enoch Godongwana, because there was quite friction between Tito Mboweni and labour unions. They never saw eye to eye, and they were never on the same page. But it seems that Enoch Godongwana, with a union history, this could be what they want.
I think on the union side, it's been mixed. I think with David Masondo, we have an exceptional young man who's competent, who's an economist, who has got a huge respect among many of us. So I would have liked to have seen him being promoted. And I think many unionists, including those in the Communist Party, would have appreciated that. Given that South Africa is in this for a long haul, we're going to have to negotiate, as I've said, a lot of the debt rescheduling, given the fact that we're really highly indebted. And if our economy doesn't grow rapidly, thanks to the commodity cycle at the moment, if the cycle had to turn, we're going to have problems of repaying some of our debt. So I expected him, Dr. Masondo, to be appointed. So, I'm not so sure how many of those unionists will be very happy with Mr. Godongwana. But with small businesses, it's a huge relief on the one side, because Minister Stella, who's coming in, leaves a very difficult portfolio where she's been dismal. Firstly, we're looking at her in her past post to address the issue around digital spectrum, the migration from analog to digital, and really finalize policy and policy direction on rapid deployment of electronic communication networks and facilities. She was dismal. So really coming to a very difficult space where we're looking for job creation from small businesses. I'm very concerned. But anyway, let's give her a chance to prove herself. But this small business is a critical portfolio for us to create jobs, because we know that small businesses, given our structural unemployment, has got that possibilities. But it requires somebody on the ground, also a very close relationship with the Department of Cooperative Governance, because a lot of our small businesses, particularly in the rural towns, have been undermined by lack of competence by those municipalities, as we have seen in Lichtenburg, where one of the milk producers or dairy producers has now planned to move outside that small town of Lichtenburg. So these issues, I'm hoping that Minister Stella will be able to deal with. But given her role in the communications, I've got huge reservation, but I look forward to working with her.
Yeah. Just on a parting shot, because, we've got to wrap this up. But, a lot of people looking at this, weighing in, and just looking at some of the responses from our viewers out there and saying, what's different? All that's happened is that the chess pieces have just been shuffled around the table. That's it. Nothing's going to change. It's all going to be the same. This was a moment for the president to really take action and to really do something that would fundamentally change the trajectory of this country and really show who's in power, and that didn't happen. Do you agree with some of the sentiment?
Absolutely. This is, my colleagues in academia call it path dependence. This is the president who was a deputy president in the Zuma regime. So he knows the game. And in fact, with the corruption that under Zuma took place, it has continued under his watch, as we have seen with Zweli, Mkhize and many others at local level, particularly here in our metro in Johannesburg. So really, it's a continuation. So this is the ANC, and this is not only a South African phenomenon. It is a similar phenomenon that you saw in the so-called Arab Spring, where we all were very optimistic about possibilities, and nothing came out. So the so-called Ramaphosa that we saw in 2018 was really just, I think, some excitement over nothing. This is the ANC. The ANC is embedded with corruption. It's part of its gene. So if people want change, they have to exercise their choice when elections come. Otherwise, with the ANC, corruption is embedded. It will continue, and the country will continue performing below its production possibility boundary.
Yeah, and I mean, just as we wrap it up, so many people just saying, Fritz Karsten saying this is the same view with a different angle, and Brahloni, this one's quite a powerful one. It's a motion of no confidence against young people and against women. President appointing 3 old men, Gungubele, Pahla and Godongwana, and 1 old lady, Modise, as his new ministers. Don't we have any young blood? And that is the million-dollar question, Lumkile. Where is the young blood? You know, this is something that we're missing so dearly when people look up and look at our ministers and say, is this the best we have?
Well, I mean, in South Africa, we know about talent, not only within the ANC, but across political parties, across civil society. It is a challenge that under the ANC has been seen to be above the constitution. So therefore, the ANC sees itself as the leader of society, very much similar to the Communist Party of China. In that schema of things I've described, you're going to see the ANC behaving the way it's behaving, where you need to earn a credential. If you're not in the struggle against apartheid, you don't have a checkered past, you're unlikely to make it. Unfortunately, most of the youth is energetic, is pro-South Africa, wants to get things done, but, you know, they're dealing with a party that has got no ambition, but an ambition to preserve itself as a leader of society and making sure that the name ANC remains, as Zuma will argue, until Jesus comes back.
And we leave it there. Lumkile Mondi, thanks very much for joining us. Lumkile is from the School of Economics and Finance at Wits University. Let's quickly take a break. More analysis from